chilling.
Yeah.
And they're getting sick of the Fed saying, we're not gonna cut, we're not gonna cut, we're not gonna cut. So there's been a lot of pressure on them. And what they've been doing is normally, and I think I've talked about this before, is normally when you have the indicators on the Fed side of what's going to increase or decrease the interest rate, inflation has a lot to do with it. So as interest rates increase, or as the Fed increases interest rates, it usually curbs that inflation. Well, that's not happening, and that continues not to happen. In fact, inflation continues to kind of creep up a little. And so they're saying, well, we're not gonna concentrate so much on the inflation numbers, now we're gonna concentrate on unemployment numbers. Well, the unemployment numbers are now slowly increasing. And they kind of gave us a little like magic number from an unemployment standpoint, is if it gets to that 4.2%, they're not gonna have a choice but to cut interest rates. Well, we're literally hovering at 4.1 right now. So it's kind of like people are kind of anticipating and waiting for these interest rates to drop from a Fed standpoint, and that will obviously help the bond market and obviously help mortgage interest rates. But until that happens, we're kind of just volatility in the market on everything else. You know, job creations, CPI numbers, all these different factors that are playing into it to give us a reason to kind of have that fluctuation, that volatility in the market. So if you look at the charts, and since, you know, it's just a couple of you here, you can kind of see like what has happened. This is a range of interest rates going up and down in the market over the last 30 days. What this basically means is down here we're at 8%, up here we're at like 6.5%. You know, so it's like you can see that this has been going up and down, and the larger the bar is, the more volatility on that single day. So you can see things have changed drastically on a day-to-day basis over time. And you can even just see from last week. I mean, last week we were back up into 7.5, and now we're back down to 6.5. So you can kind of see like what that does. And when I say those numbers, I say, you know, buying some points and kind of where people feel comfortable in the market. And these are 30-year fixed rates. So basically the long and the short of it is that the job creations that are happening aren't as much as they need to be. The unemployment rate is slowly creeping up again, and it's just kind of like everyone's guess as to what the Fed is going to do next. And so we're just basically, in my job right now, and what I work with my clients on right now, is when is the ideal time to lock? What is the market telling us for this week? When are you closing, and how much time do we have to kind of ride that market and see what we can come up with? And so those are just things to keep in mind, that, you know, even on the Minnesota housing or the bond program side, those interest rates usually don't change except for weekly. We've been seeing number of changes during the week for those interest rates as well. So it's just keep in mind that the volatility is there, and it's really about making sure your lender educates your clients and understanding what their options are, and understanding where those interest rates are, and when the ideal time to lock is. And so we have, you know, that's like my best piece of advice would be, you know, as your clients are out shopping, there's gonna be some volatility on any given day, just to keep in mind that if they are payment sensitive, that, you know, we can have those discussions about, you know, when the interest rate gets to 6.5, if that's where you're comfortable, that's when we'll lock in, or where that comfort level is. So that's that. Now let's talk about your listings. So normally, you know, loan officer, what do I have to do with your listings? What do I care, right? But you know, and I can always offer things like marketing flyers and doing all that stuff. But what I really think is important right now is for your sellers to have, and for you guys to have a lender on the buy side that you can trust. And so in Chrissy and I's discussion, we started talking about this idea that if you have a listing, and let's just say, one example is if you have a listing that's kind of outdated and it needs some renovation, and it's going to be a little bit harder to sell because it is outdated, or it needs some fixing, or it needs something like that, I can put together options for lending on that particular home that can be marketed within the listing. For example, for a renovation loan. So you can market the property as a renovation property and say, okay, you know, you can get $15,000 to do X, Y, and Z, or $20,000, or whatever the number is, and here's how the numbers will look. Also, if you use my preferred lender, then they will give you another $1,000 credit towards the purchase, you know, towards your closing costs, if you were to, you know, use this lender, that type of thing. effective, that can be effective because number one, again, you guys get, and your seller gets a lender that you know and that you trust and that will actually close the loan. Number two, it gives the buyer a little bit of incentive to, do the pre-approval and go through that process. We can also take homes, and it's really about, not necessarily about saying, oh, my lender will give you $1,000. It's more saying, what's gonna be best for this property as far as programs go. Because a $300,000 house, you're gonna get a borrower that can most likely get a subsidized interest rate versus a $500,000 house that you're gonna be looking at a whole different category of buyers. So it would be up to me as a lender to match that product that's gonna be best fit to market that house. Now, whether that client actually takes that loan or not, or we have a different program or whatever that is, the point being that it can really help set people up and get an idea of, buyers, what their payments are gonna be, what their closing costs are gonna look like, what they're gonna need coming into this home, so that as they are shopping around and as they are looking at your guys' listings in particular, they already know, I can afford this house, and it's not really a waste of the seller's time, and it's not really a waste of their time either.
Right.
For my buyers, I'm always doing analysis of the properties that they're going to see and telling them hey, this is how much it's gonna cost you, this is how much you're gonna need to close, et cetera, and those are very property specific ones, so there's no reason that we can't translate that information to the listing side. So that's kind of where I'm coming from and saying, hey, I don't even, it's just an opportunity for that buyer to get pre-approved, and then if you guys wanted to throw in, some cash to the buyer and say, okay, if you use my lender, I'll give a $500 or another $1,000. Or if you want to say, and the seller will give $1,000. We can promote it and market it in any way possible to kind of get that specific buyer in there that's looking for it and create more interest and value in that property. Also more interest and value in the listing appointment as well, and saying, hey, this is how I do it. We put a lending program in place that any buyer that comes in, they have an opportunity to get pre-approved with my preferred lender. It's very important that you know that your buyer is actually pre-approved, and that your buyer is going to close on time and things like that. So that's kind of what we're trying out. We've done some marketing with it together, and just kind of promoting it, and so it should help.
It's just one more way to look at some of these listings that aren't moving as quickly as we'd like them to.
And even listings that are.
Would you be able to send us a copy of one? I mean, we can put example or something across it, there's personal information.
I can send them on
the renovation loan one.
Yeah, just because then I can put that in my listing presentation that I have.
Yeah.
Because I have separate ones. I have ones just for short term, and then I have investors, and then I have ones for residential. So that would be good to have.
Yeah, I can just, I don't think I have it on this computer, do I? Yeah, because I sent it to you, but yeah, I can forward that on to you.
Cool, yeah, that'd be awesome.
That you can see it. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's helpful. It's one more thing.
Yeah,
it is. And it's just, let me see here.
And
I'll
I
have
think
to get email addresses.
for me, working with so many of these senior clients that have been in their homes for a really long time, there's sometimes deferred maintenance, they're in desperate need of cosmetic updates, those types of things, and having the numbers, if you were to, you call it a renovation loan, even though it's not like they're gutting the house.
No.
But if they can get $10,000-$15,000 to do some of these things, this is what it looks like.
Yeah.
So
I
we
just thought
put
of
that
a
together with
client.
the listing.
I went to her. It's Shar Klug. I went to her house, and it's kind of like an emotional thing too, because her dad helped do a lot of the renovations on the home. But when I went into the basement, there must have been some water, so the sheetrock is all chopped down, And she's thinking all these things she can do, right? And how she has all this ability, but she's like, but what if I just sell this property and then take that money, because it's almost free and clear, almost, and then just move on to 2 more properties. She's considering owner occupy and a duplex to try to house hack, and so maybe we should connect on her property because we had a listing appointment, and I think she was just a little overwhelmed with the options, but like if I could help her ease,
Yeah.
like if she went on the market just as is,
Yeah.
you know,
This is what, yeah.
and then
this is
somebody
what
could take advantage of that loan product, that would be, that would help
And it's
her.
not, keep in mind, it's not just for renovation. I mean, we, like, for example, a $300,000 property would be a good opportunity for a client to qualify for a $4,000 grant. Or to qualify for that down payment assistance, because
Yeah.
normally in that price range, there's a certain, you know, there's a certain clientele that's looking in that price range, and so we can, you know, some of these properties could be great opportunities for grant money,
Yeah.
down payment assistance money, or even saying, okay, you can get into this property for as little as 3% down, or you can get
Yeah,
into this
right,
property for
right.
as little as 5% down,
Right.
and you know, just really making the agent on the buyer side aware, making the buyer aware, you know, things of that nature. And it's not in an effort to necessarily, you know, take buyers away from their current pre-approval. It's just giving you guys the know-how that, hey, I know, you know, I work with Nikki. I know that if she says a loan is going to close, it's going to close.
Yeah.
And, you know, your sellers won't have to worry about it. Then you get clear lines of communication with your buyer's lender as well. Because how many times have you guys been in a transaction where you don't even hear from them?
Yeah,
From the
right.
lender? You know, it's
Right.
like,
A lot.
you know, it happens a lot. And so,
Yeah.
that's always surprised me in this industry, how people don't communicate, but,
Yeah, or how much-
issue.
Or how much
And
the
then it's
lender
like, oh,
puts
that's actually
on the
fine.
customer. Like,
Yes.
I've seen that too, like where somebody didn't even do their pre-approvals, they wanted the client to log into the software.
yes.
And print it themselves. But then
yeah.
I couldn't go into the software to print it.
Yeah,
So it was like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, there's
Yeah.
clearly like some, you know,
Miscommunication.
levels
Like,
of, you know,
yeah.
people
Levels of
run their
service,
business
yeah.
differently, yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
So then a question would be, if they did do something like that, and they're a veteran in an area that I know, has a lot of grants because it's like a area they want to populate, then that could even, they
Yes,
could
correct.
take could they use multiple
You
things?
can, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where it's like, we're gonna market something that's appropriate for the actual property, and that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the end result, but it's like, what's the best, easiest, most catching marketing product for that particular property? In a rural housing area, we could market a rural housing 0% down, you know, that might make more sense. Plus
Yeah.
$4,000 to closing costs, you know, things of that nature that can kind of help incent the buyer to say, okay, not only am I interested in this listing, but I can get, you know, a pre-approval done and get another $1,000 or get another whatever that is. And on your guys' side, don't be afraid to say, hey, you know what, if you use the preferred lender, the seller will contribute, you know, ask your seller, like, hey, I'll give another
Yeah.
1,000, sure, you know, I see value
Yeah.
in that,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
to kind of like up the ante. a
Cause
little
this
bit.
right now could be the difference between my client listing her property and getting to where she really wants to
Yeah,
go
when she's
and
comfortable.
not.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely,
Where's the
absolutely.
house?
It's in Brooklyn Center.
Yeah.
It's a great like Rambler, like great home.
Yeah.
Really.
So it would be a good flip.
Oh yeah.
So you should
Oh,
definitely
yeah.
send that over. 'Cause
Yeah.
I'll send
Oh
it.
yeah. It's and I think the price point's gonna be, you know, it's got to be under 300 for that
Oh, yeah.
neighborhood. Like just off the top of my head,
Yeah.
I did do a CMA. I don't remember now, but yeah.
Definitely
Yeah.
send it over for sure if she's wanting to sell it as is. Cause that one that Kurt, I think he's gonna go with that other client.
Okay. Yeah, so that's great. Maybe we can
Yeah.
connect you and I can I just send you the address?
Sure.
And then I
Yeah,
have like
absolutely.
some pictures, but
Yeah.
I don't do need like